Lee and the brothers from the 4th Heavy Field Artillery fought in skirmishes and battles in and around Tennessee. Only one of the Wills men died. And here is an excerpt from chapter 3. 5 days before Christmas, December 20th, 1863, Richard Wills, who so valiantly volunteered to fight for his freedom, transitioned to eternal freedom and rest all by himself. In the company descriptive book, a clerk noted in the remarks section, died in Regimental Hospital of Columbus, Kentucky, the 20th day of December of rubeola and diarrhea. Perhaps the saddest footnote of them all is to whom were Richard's remains given? Clearly, slave master Edmund Willis Wills didn't want them. Unless the boy could work like a mule, Richard was of no use to him dead. Besides, that slave was AWOL from the plantation, and that cost Edmund Wills a lot of money and work. Who were Richard's mother and father? Slavery and its horrible arrangement had erased Richard's heritage and robbed him of his birthright. He was a motherless child with no one to wipe his blistered forehead or tend to his blistered body, and no one to even bury what was left of him. His living and death was essentially one and the same. As a slave, he had always been a dead man walking, with no firm identity, no independence, and no legacy. The United States of America had sanctioned her citizens to shred his soul to pieces, save what they could use and appropriate for themselves. Richard Wills was gone and forgotten long before he had actually died. But his death was yet another reason why the Civil War had to go forth. Andy, James, Dick, and Mac, well, they probably stood before his diseased corpse and held a small funeral for him. Maybe they got to give him last rites and pray for his soul to be reconnected with a freedom-loving God. And you know what? Richard did die on his own terms. He died a free man in a soldier's uniform. Well, there's a chance the whole regiment turned out to give him final respects. Conceivably, they may have viewed his death not as a crushing blow, but as a rock-solid victory. Richard had come from generations of slaves, but he was probably the first to die on his own terms. Imaginably, it was a celebration of how all the men of the 4th would leave the world. Death held no sting for these soldiers. In fact, it held great promise. Like Lazarus, the diseased beggar in the Holy Scriptures, whom Jesus brought back to life with the sound of his voice, well, maybe those Wills brothers thought that they too would leap from their graves, bound hand and foot, and hop right into heaven. Well, there was no time to mourn for Richard, because the arc of death was a shadow that loomed over all of them. Death was probably not even their overriding fear. The soldiers were probably more concerned that their lives and their combat not be in vain. Their oxygen-rich blood fertilizing American soil was nothing new. So long as no one would ever own them or their children or their children's children but God. As the remaining brothers defended the fort without Richard, I bet they didn't look back. Richard didn't even get to fight the battle, but Andy, Mac, James, Dick, and my great-great-great-grandpa Sandy were now firmly poised to win the war. Richard, too, sings America. Now, after my great-great-great-grandpa died, my great-great-great-grandma Emma, his widow, filed for a pension for herself and her 9 children, The United States War Department, believe it or not, in the 1880s, treated Emma like a lion baby mama every step of the way.